Hello everyone, this is Turd Flinging Monkey, and today we're going to revisit a living legend. Barely living, but still alive. So if you've been part of the MGTOW community for a while, you may remember a name of a man called Man-Woman Myth. A Man-Woman Myth was one of the original MGTOW that separated from the MRA movement, around the 2012s, along with Barbarossa, Stardust, and he made some really great videos. I'll play a clip. I never actually talked to Man-Woman Myth before. It was kind of like before my time, but his videos were very well done. Good editing, good presentation. I'll just let the video speak for itself.
Men simply do not exist as a group, except where they do something bad.
A man from Armagh has been given a life sentence. A man's been found guilty at the Old Bailey.
The man charged with the brutal murder of...
A man's been charged with murdering...
The same man could be responsible for 2 double murders.
5 to 6 men would rape us for hours.
All the suspects are male.
The man convicted of killing the former.
The man accused of raping and murdering.
This tragedy is man-made.
Police across the country are hunting this man.
There are con men and gunmen, and there are manhunts.
The gunmen were branded as terrorists.
1 gunman and 2 accomplices.
But when men do good things or brave things, as they overwhelmingly do day in, day out, or when men are the victims of tragedies, then suddenly the word men disappears into some kind of unmentionable abyss.
A Canadian submarine with 57 on board drifts in heavy seas.
Royal Navy and RAF assets.
Just tell us about the number of people on board.
There's 57 crew. There was 9 personnel who reported smoke inhalation. 2 of concern, but none of them require a medevac from the submarine.
To reach 13 coal miners who were trapped after an explosion in West Virginia.
We believe the individuals might be located.
People die on roadworks simply because they're trying to mend our roads and make them better for us.
People were desperate to feed themselves and their families.
The workforce were ruthlessly exploited. 112 of them died. The lives of future passengers depend on the steady hands of these craftspeople and engineers.
2 firefighters have died after a blaze in East London. The pair were on the top floor of the building.
4 RAF crew are feared dead. None of the crew members have been found. 5 soldiers were killed.
4 bodies have been found near. Contact with the crew was lost. 5 members of the regiment were killed.
3 US soldiers died there today, but 9 others have been killed.
The soldier was airlifted to Baghdad for treatment.
When Iraqi fighting men are killed, they're insurgents.
They say they've killed hundreds of the insurgents in fighting like this.
When they kidnap a woman, they're men.
Mrs. Hassan was kidnapped by armed men who stopped her car.
The deaths of men are deliberately suppressed behind their job titles and gender-neutral labels. Men are reduced from human beings to human doings. Women, however, certainly do exist, especially when something bad happens. Indeed, tragedies are somehow more tragic when women are affected.
3 students and a female officer among the dead. Many of those who died were passers-by, including 7 women.
Hundreds of thousands, mostly women and children, are living in camps with little food and clean water.
Hospital officials said women and children are among the dead.
BBC has evidence of police attacking women and children.
An entire trench was filled with women and children.
Mostly women and children.
At the roadside, we saw women and children. They're being forced to flee.
While the women are forced to flee, the men are forced to die. But we hear nothing about that. It's just as accurate to lump men and children together. Why are the deaths of men rubbed out of the public's consciousness?
Now, like I said, Man-Woman Myth kind of dropped off the scene before my time. I never really got to know him. I watched some of his videos, I was impressed. But he recently resurfaced. And it's kind of sad, but I think it's important because I think there's lessons to be learned. So here is a clip of Man-Woman Myth circa this year.
My situation is fairly straightforward. I've had a brain injury. a quite severe brain injury, and I think it was possibly 4 years ago. I have very vague memories of the jobs I used to do and the places I've worked. I don't know where I live, for example, but I do have addresses in my head of places that I've lived. But I don't actually know which address I live at, so I don't understand the situation. I know I was married, but I believe I'm divorced now. I simply don't know the status beyond that. So something happened that led to a divorce. I know that much, I think. I'm not in touch with my ex-wife, so I don't know the situation. I also have 2 children, and the only thing I know about them, absolutely the only thing I know about them, are their names. I have 2 children and I know their names, and that's it. Everything else is just gone. So I'm desperately hopeful that I can rebuild some kind of relationship with them in due course. I don't know how that will work, seeing as my wife hasn't been in touch with me, so I haven't seen the children for, I think, 4 years or so. Now, I think I had my injury in 2015, so I think it's been 4 years since I saw the children, maybe 5 almost.
So long story short, about 4 years ago, which corresponds to about the time when, I was kind of entering the MGTOW community, a man-woman myth tried to kill himself. And he didn't succeed, but he did cause himself brain damage, and he lost a lot of his memories. And as you could hear, he's struggling. I mean, it's great that he's alive. It's great that he's coming back to YouTube, but is he even going to be able to make the kinds of videos he used to with all that brain damage? Now, the point of this video isn't just play a violin from Man-Woman Myth. I honestly feel bad for him. I hope that he, gets better and maybe recovers some of his faculties and maybe even makes content again. I don't know. But I think it's important to understand the process by which this sort of thing happens. I talked to there was a guy who told me he was going to kill himself. I responded to his email. I made a video about it. I sent him that video the next day, but he never responded, never heard from him again. So as far as I know, he went through with it. So this happens all the time. Now, why does this happen? Why do men like Man-Woman Myth, clearly intelligent, aware, why do men who get red-pilled end up killing themselves? What can we do to stop it? I think the important thing, step 1, is to understand kind of where this is coming from. You have to understand, when I talk about the red pill grief cycle, the kind of this MRA activism, this desire to fight the system, this is a manifestation of red pill rage. This is what Man-Woman Myth did. He made videos addressing the problem, and nothing happened. This is the wall that MRAs always run into. It doesn't matter how right you are. It doesn't matter what your arguments are. It doesn't matter how many charts you have. The MRAs are right. Society is completely discriminatory against men. And even if the laws are gender neutral, they're only used to favor women. The system is fucked. Feminism has betrayed its so-called principles when it comes to egalitarianism and equality. So what? You don't have the power to fix this. Because women outvote you, they vote for their self-interest, and they don't give the slightest shit about society. They care only about themselves. So eventually you realize, you come to terms with the fact that the MRA approach just isn't going to work. The sorts of realizations that come with the red pill often are very painful. The realization that your plan for your life has been taken from you and you're not going to get it back. I talk to guys who really want to be husbands and fathers. And I tell them your best bet is to move to a third world country where women don't have rights and just stay there. Don't bring her back to the West. Just stay there. It's just sad to see someone like Man-Woman Myth, kind of what he's become. I mean, I'm glad he's alive, but it's just sad. This didn't have to be this way. This is why I think the community is so important. I've been through the valley. A lot of other people have been through the valley. People who've told me they've self-actualized, they've never had to go through the valley. You talk to them for 5 minutes, you realize they're in denial. They haven't even started the journey. They're just deluding themselves into thinking they're self-actualized when they're just in complete denial. It's kind of funny in a way, kind of ironic. But for those of you who've been through the valley and you know what it's like and you've climbed out the other side, I understand that once you get going, once you start building momentum, you see that freedom, you see that light at the end, you start enjoying your life, you realize life is beautiful and you're like ready to go. Before you take off, just turn around and just consider helping someone else. There are other people who are stuck in the valley who could use your help. You've been through it, you understand what it's like. Reach your hand out and help someone out. Don't let what happened to Man, Woman, Myth happen to anyone else.
So I am trying to work out what life is now. And things are incredibly difficult. But I also realize that as difficult as they are for me, they're much more difficult for many other people. But I am very confused and wondering what life is, basically, and how I make my life into something worthwhile. I thankfully I do have energy, but what I'm looking for and hoping for is inspiration to do something useful. So I do want to communicate and be worthwhile in the world. I don't want to be just a patient that needs to be looked after. So I will see how it goes, and I am trying very hard.